Hey everyone, welcome back to HD Reddit Reads. Today's topic is Lawyers of Reddit. What is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost your case? Let's get into it. Little late to the party, but here goes. An obligatory, not my client. Company I worked for at the time was doing due diligence before acquiring a small tech startup. The COO of the tech startup was a well-liked guy in the company, friendly and outgoing. Though we had heard rumblings that the COO was rather hands-on with the work and with female employees. Apparently, there was a walkaway package proposed to the COO that would let him keep a sizable portion of his post-acquisition bonus because a young woman who worked in their sales department had filed HR complaints against the COO and obtained counsel. I sat in on the meeting with the COO and the company's retained lawyers while they grilled him about his contacts with the young woman. The COO denied ever having contact with her within the company without multiple other people present. Those people said his behavior towards her in the meetings didn't raise any flags. The COO empathetically denied having any contact with her outside of work. The lawyers asked and questioned a half dozen different ways, and each time the COO denied any out-of-work contact. Later we meet with a woman and her lawyer with the COO not present. Her lawyer gives us a rather graphic card that came with a bouquet of flowers addressed to her from the COO. The guy had an account with a florist linked to his credit card. When the company retained lawyers confronted him, he said, "But I never said I had contact with her. It's not like I delivered the flowers myself." The COO got terminated for cause, so no walkaway package. At her request, the woman was given PTO until after the acquisition, then moved to another one of the companies under our umbrella. My house was robbed. In addition to all the stuff the thief took, he also stole a bunch of my suits and all my neckties. I had a big collection, like 100 or so. However, the thief left fingerprints on the hard plastic box, and I kept spare change in. Fast forward 3 months, the thief is caught in the act of robbing another house in the same neighborhood. Same detectives on my case, and this new theft. They fingerprint the guy, and the fingerprints match the ones from my house. At the thief's arrangement, I see him stroll in wearing my suit and tie. I tell the district attorney. He says there's no real way to prove it. However, the tie he chose to wear was one-of-a-kind street map of San Francisco, and I still had all the documentation to prove it. The district attorney's eyes widen, and he informs the judge. The judge has the thief placed under arrest again for possession of stolen property. The thief's lawyer was dumbfounded. It was a nice end to a rough situation. Lawyer in the UK. I acted for a member of a famous pedophile hunting group. My client was charged with various offenses relating to his vigilantism, most seriously causing grievous bodily harm with intent. He wanted me to fight the case on a public interest offense point that is not available to him in statute or a common law contrary to my advice. I followed his instructions as I'm bound to do. If the state won't push pedophiles properly, then it's left to men like my client to take the law into their own hands. A horseshit argument for a whole host of reasons. His laptop was seized by police and submitted for forensic examination. He had a staggeringly huge database of child pornography on it. He himself was a massive pedo. Minor traffic cases can be the worst for this, believe it or not, because they are short and simple, and oftentimes the client isn't there. So if you get blindsided by something critical, there's often no chance to consult with them to turn things around. I had a simple speeding case, 70 miles per hour and a 55, no big deal. If she does a driving improvement course, the court will usually dismiss or reduce those, since her driving record wasn't bad. When I showed up for her, I found out she had been driving 70 up an unplowed snow lane to get around all the other cars traveling in the lane that had been plowed because they were driving too slow. I didn't know it was even possible to drive 70 on fresh snow. The officer stated he had already cut her a break by not writing the ticket for reckless driving, and the judge politely agreed he didn't feel comfortable reducing it under those circumstances. When I called her up after court to confirm, she did, claim she'd forgotten to mention it. Now maybe I've lived too much of my life in the South, but that just boggles my mind as a detail you'd forget when hiring a lawyer for the incident. I would have told her in advance that hiring us was a waste of money, not to mention the hassle of taking an 8-hour class, and that she would probably just go ahead and pay this one. I legitimately do that all the time during consults. Give my honest assessment if the case is even worth doing. And so by admitting that detail, she harmed herself for no reason. At least she took it well and didn't get defensive. A friend of mine is a defense attorney. He was representing a guy with a lengthy record for assault. Basically, this guy took an AC unit and threw it at his girlfriend. My buddy tells me he was able to get a plea deal for 1 year probation, no jail time. The judge is all ready to accept the deal and then asks the defendant if he had anything he would like to say. The defendant responds, "Yeah, I don't know why they're charging me with assault. I never touched her. I just threw the AC at her. This is bullshit." Judge rescinded the plea deal because the defendant's attitude / lack of remorse. Went to trial and got a year in jail. Client said his ex owed him a lot of money and that she was trying to get out of paying him back by getting a protective order against him. Seemed reasonable, so I took this case. At the hearing, it came out that they were never a couple, and that he was sending sex toys to her residence on a weekly basis, and that she never asked for the thousands of dollars he gave her over the years. Stripper. We lost, he got laughed out of court, and he learned a valuable lesson. Tell all your lawyers the good and bad stuff before trial. Guy in prison hired me to request a modification to his sentence because he was doing very well, completing a lot of optional programs, no rule violations, etc. He had his family come in and pay and everything to get started. I asked the family and the client if they had requested modification before, because the law said that for his conviction, he can only request modification twice for any one sentence, regardless of if they were granted or denied. Swore up and down he'd never filed before. You can see where this is going. After spending a few hours going over records and preparing documents, a copy of the CCS, the case record basically, finally arrived. He'd personally filed for modification 6 times since he was sentenced with handwritten pleadings that were all denied. So the one he hired me for was a waste of time and would never be considered at all. I'm a court-appointed attorney for qualifying individuals in family matters. Termination of parental rights case. Have been fighting to argue that parent is stable, working lawfully, has a suitable apartment, doesn't need psychotropic meds anymore, ready to be a parent, etc. After a few months of negotiating with all parties and Department of Children Court Services, we have a pre-trial to try and convince guardians. I meet with my client before the hearing to see if anything changed. Nope, all good. Let's get my kids. Great, that's not happening today, but let's try. We get going in court. My client, who's super hot-headed and quick to anger, gets riled up and goes off on the guardians, screaming in open court. It doesn't end there, but reveals 1, that they are no longer working, 2, no longer in an apartment, 3, doesn't want to have any relationship with the guardians despite her kids loving them, 4, won't send her kids pictures of toys they miss and can't have, 5, plans on moving out of the state, 6, thinks they can live as a family off of state aid when she gets them back, and is 4 months pregnant, all in a matter of 15 seconds. I was too shocked to even react, speechless. Not the image of stability and parental fitness I've been trying to paint since last July. Edit to clarify, client was working really hard to get everything right, and legitimately had everything going for her prior to this hearing. I was not making false representations or trying to get a monster reinstated. This was a true bombshell, as I did my due diligence to make sure things were on the up and up and statutory requirements were met. Things fell apart very apparently. This was a very atypical situation. Parents typically do a really good job working hard to meet the requirements. I wasn't a lawyer in this role, but was a law clerk. This was a typical divorce case. This particular jury trial was about splitting assets and who would get what. It was a long drawn-out case that took about 5 days. Right before the closing arguments, the attorneys wanted to talk to the judge. It seems as though a couple of days prior, the couple decided to get back together, and instead of telling the judge and their lawyers, they just kept it a secret. We heard 4 days of evidence, arguments, brought in experts such as land assessors, financial planning people, and the like, and they were back together. One of my attorneys asked to be dismissed from the case immediately and walked out of the courtroom, and the couple was adamant that they didn't think that them getting back together was a detail any of the attorneys needed to know. Edit. Yes, in some states there are jury trials for divorces. However, this particular case wasn't the divorce, but for a cause of action stemming from the divorce, marital property, it was a jury trial. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing. It'll be greatly appreciated. And if you want to visit the original thread, I'll link it in the description. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one.